A day after Vice President Harris announced she would be seeking the Democratic nomination, more than 40,000 black men joined a Zoom call to let the would-be first black woman president know that they have her back. One of the organizers of that call joins me now, Kwame Raoul, the Attorney General of this state of Illinois. Kwame, we're speaking on the eve of the Democratic Convention here in your state. I'm already here in Chicago. Given everything that's happened in this race, what does it mean to have this historic event in your state this year?
Well, it's awesome. Welcome to Chicago, Reverend Al, a city first settled upon by a Haitian man who embraced diversity, married a Potawatomi woman, and thought of Chicago as a center of trade in the Midwest, and it has lasted as such until this day. And to those, as Mitch said, who try to undermine Kamala Harris's identity, having this in Chicago, a place that lifts up our diversity, doesn't treat it as a bad word, looks at diversity as something that brings about economic advantage, inclusiveness. We're proud to host this convention that will further lift up Kamala Harris in the polls and start dispelling some of this misinformation campaign that seeks to undermine her campaign.
Now, as I mentioned, you were part of the virtual fundraising call, Win with Black Men, where tens of thousands joined, raising $1.3 million in just 4 hours. During the call, you made the distinction of what it means to be strong. You say it shows strength to stand behind and support a black woman leader. What type of reception did you get from the other men on the call? And how do you measure the success of the call?
The call was highly successful, not only because of the money, but because of the messaging, because it's not isolated to the black community. The sort of misogyny that has historically existed that doesn't lift up women either in politics or in corporate America or in church or in other places. We dispel that. We, just like in the clip you played earlier with regards to Kamala Harris, where she talked about strength reflects lifting people up. We believe that if you have a woman who's as qualified as Kamala Harris, who's served as local prosecutor, served as attorney general, served as U.S. senator, served as vice president, cast the deciding votes for the measures that lifted us up out of the pandemic. You have to lift her up. And it doesn't diminish your strength to lift her up. It shows you it's stronger to lift her up.
Now, black men are going to be a key constituency in this year's election. Right now, the Black Men Vote PAC is ramping up its investment in battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania to get black men to turn out and vote for the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has been trying to pick off some black support from Democrats in ways that many people find offensive, claiming that they will vote for him because he's been arrested, has a mugshot, or selling Trump-themed sneakers. Do you think Harris's entry into the race has undermined Trump's pitch to young black men, or is there still more work to be done?
There's certainly work to be done. I mean, the excitement of the call gives me great confidence that we can be successful in that work. But meanwhile, concurrently, the Trump campaign, the MAGA campaign, continues to try to divide us, to undermine. And you talked about offensive. As a fellow Caribbean American, I don't stand up to nobody saying that I'm not black. I'm a descendant of slavery, but at the same time, I'm a descendant of the Taino indigenous people who were in the Caribbean way before Columbus arrived there. That doesn't make me any less black. That doesn't make me any less susceptible to the disproportionate negative impact of a lot of historical policies within our country. And to have a candidate like Kamala Harris who's spoken against them and who has acted against them is critically important.
Now let's turn to your work with other state attorney generals who had joined forces to back federal regulation of interstate gun sales. This would restrict individuals from receiving or transferring firearms across state lines without proper approvals. This is one example of the important work that you all do as AGs. As you know, Kamala Harris is the former California Attorney General, as you said, former Attorney General of California. Talk to me about why this job is an important part of her resume.
Well, it's critically important. You know, unfortunately, when people talk about gun violence, they highlight Chicago all too frequently, although the problem is a national problem. But I can tell you, the communities that are disproportionately affected by gun violence in Chicago, in those communities, we don't manufacture guns. We don't legally sell guns. Those are manufactured elsewhere. They're illegally trafficked into the community, into the hands of people who are ineligible to possess them, and taking the lives of our children. Gun violence has overtaken car accidents as the #1 killer of children in America, not just in Chicago, but throughout America. I'm proud to, as an AG and collectively with my AGs and working together with the Vice President, to work against gun trafficking, to make sure we take steps make sure that we take steps to end this trafficking and have reasonable, respecting the Second Amendment, but reasonable policies to keep our children and keep our community safe.
Now, before you go, I'm out of time, but I want to get your thoughts on Sonia Massey, who was fatally shot by law enforcement last month in her own home. She called because she thought there was an intruder in her Springfield, Illinois home. The sheriff in the county has announced his retirement in the wake of the incident. As you know, I came into Chicago and did a rally on behalf of her and getting justice and her family. Massey's family is calling for new legislation to improve police hiring practices amidst the reports that the deputy who shot and killed Massey may have had red flags on his record because he'd been in 6 other law enforcement assignments in different districts. Your thoughts, briefly, please, but I had to ask you about it.
No, I appreciate the question. And I just days ago, I met with the Massey family, along with their attorney, Ben Crump. First off, we've done a lot in law enforcement reform. I personally sponsored it as a state senator and led it as an attorney general. However, Officer Grayson should have not been hired from the first police department. He worked at 6 different police departments within 4 years. He shouldn't have been hired from the first department with 2 DUIs and a dishonorable discharge for serious misconduct from the military. He shouldn't. If it was me or anybody, it was you, somebody looked like you or I who had applied at those same police stations, I promise you we would not have been hired. That was a travesty of justice that cost a life, and it should not have happened.
You were going to rally around her kids as well and her mom. Thank you, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul.